This is something I should have done a long time ago, but people that come to my channel and leave comments, they know I appreciate it. I try to answer people when they say stuff that makes sense to me and makes me feel better as a person. I love this in others. I want to be that way as well, to make someone feel better about themselves. And there's a number of regulars that come to my channel and comment and encourage me, and I'm really, really, truly appreciative of what you're doing for me, because it is a fight, this idea to do the right thing every day and then to feel the encouragement of other souls of conscience out there that are really helping me. And I just want to shout out and thank you. It's like people, and I wrote down, I mean, there's quite a number of people, and I'm not going to mention everybody, but you know, there's like a core group of people that come back, like Linda down in Idaho, and Dean Harkness over in England, an artist. He's producing, I wish he would do more. I keep encouraging him to do more video. Dean, do some more videos. I love the stuff you did. I love your poise stuff and your, what I call your poetic voiceovers. I mean, you know, you have an extreme side of you that I really like. So anyway, there are people that comment like Albert Michal and another person, Deborah Mahmoudi, who has her channel, who does fabulous videos on how children are being ignored, neglected, abused, and murdered. This is, in our culture of death, one of the most important aspects to our existence. What is making us dysfunctional is our discard of children. Even if you have, I don't think you can be neutral on this. This is something that is so profound and significant in all of our lives, that if we don't have this in our minds, in our consciousness, that children mean everything to existence, because these are the souls that will continue in the right way if they're given a chance. And it's quite amazing to me sometimes how children who are abused and go through really difficult periods, and I think Deborah Mahmoudi was a child that was abused, and how they incredibly, they exalt their existence through their suffering and terrible histories. They overcome somehow. I am deeply indebted to people that overcome in that way. I've not had that misfortune in a direct sense. I mean, I was afflicted through my own upbringing as a Roman Catholic child. I mean, they terrify the shit out of you with all the stuff they throw at you. So it's taking, I say taking, a long time to overcome that. So my shout out to Deborah. I really appreciate your videos and what you're doing and when you comment. And then, you know, Liz, and Liz is constantly back telling me, keep on keeping on. And Liz is very supportive of Dana as well. And there are so many people that you don't know how much it means to me, actually, because with the this sort of YouTube presence is, in some ways for me, is an extension of the work that I do as a painter. It has a quality, it has developed over the last 8 years or 9 even that I've been on YouTube. And if I look back at my older YouTubes, I have evolved dramatically because of what I understand, my interaction with people. And all the people that comment, Len Hummel, In the Groove, Raymond Shapira, Raymond, and people that come back, TJ Washington, Chris from Vegematic, and Elaine, obviously, Shani, who's a huge supporter of Dana, and I'm a supporter of Dana and the work that he does. And Sandy from Environmental Coffee House. And Sandy is like really huge on climate change. And now here's my point about climate change. I'm not convinced in the science that is being presented to us, the way I'm not convinced, no, the way I know that history has been fudged completely and totally to the advantage. I'm gonna at the finish of my dedication to all the people that come and comment on my channel, I'm gonna go into this a little bit, the undermining, the subterfuge that is going on. And I think the climate situation is curious. You know, it used to be global warming, but our winters are getting longer, not shorter. So there are effects that we're having on the environment on a grand scale, from the jewel in the crown, as I see it, nuclear, right through, as Sandy is doing a fabulous thing on exposing the bastard on the level of the chemical pollution that is produced through big oil, you know, coal, all that kind of stuff. But I'm shifting. My understanding is on a scale, and everyone has their fight. I think everyone has to be dedicated honestly toward the fight, but keep an open mind. We have to keep an open mind, and I have not been convinced that this is the #1 issue on our plate, even though there are, in terms of that, it comes out of the oil side of things, and oil is nasty, rotten stuff, but you can shut it off. You can't shut off nuclear, which is why I lean toward this fight. I feel I have to dedicate myself toward this fight in terms of nuclear. So Sandy, keep doing your fight, and I love the fact that you comment. And Patricia Libretto and History Project, Timeless Truth. I also want to alert you to Hank McGurk, who has a very clear mind. He, in terms of analyzing, understanding, putting facts together and going through stuff, he's helped me understand a few things, and he's on board. He's understanding what we're up against, and so there's other people that I know I'm not thinking of right now, but I appreciate your comments. So I thought I'd just make a shout out, and I know I've missed people that I wanted to mention, but you know I appreciate what you're commenting, and the fact you support my channel. Anyway. I want to transition from my last video, and the idea that it's just us, something I referred to in the sense I've always been saying, that the external world is a representation of our inner world. So whatever we're facing out there, in a fundamental way, there are nuances here, but in a fundamental way, I would say the external world that we experience directly in our day-to-day lives, as well as in the aggregate as a collective, is representative of the beings that we are. What is it that makes us us? And how has it been possible to derail us so easily? I mentioned the idea that humanity is a kind of plasma that adjusts itself to the strongest influence, or to the influence that for whatever reason is able to undermine some fundamental principles that are we are made a certain way. We have a physical structure, we have a mental structure. I will extend this into the idea of a spiritual structure from the point of view that there is a mystery, all right? The idea of spirit, to me, represents a mystery. So when I refer to the spirit in us, it's a direct reference to something that is so complex and incomprehensible, but we are aware on some level. And there are many manifestations of what this means to be aware on a level without having necessary proof, but it exists. It's just something, it's kind of like the idea in a non-religious sense, the idea of faith, that you say to yourself, and I'm not big on faith, by the way. Faith is something that, for the most part, creates the culture that we have all around us. But it's because it's not wholesome. The faith that we attach ourselves to has nothing to do with us. It has to do with somebody else and what they're telling us all the time, and it doesn't work. That's why I'm not big on faith. I am huge on hope. I am huge on hope, because without hope, you're not going to get up in the morning. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. If you don't have hope, you're just going to die in your sleep. So people fundamentally wake up because there is a feeling of hope. Whether it's misplaced or whether it's in the right place, I don't know. People actually function on a level of hope that gives them, hope is that feeling in us that something is working. And we're dedicated towards that end, that something is working well, working right, not dysfunctional or destructive. So how has it been possible How has it been possible for something to occur that so fundamentally could derail us from a path? I mean, we all struggle, we all have issues and resolving things, but how could it have gone so fundamentally wrong? I'm making this proposition, and in my last video I said, if you think everything is hunky-dory in your life and the world out there, you don't need to listen to me because there is no point. And wouldn't it be wonderful if I was totally a flake and nuts and a complete nutbag and I'm making all this up? I would love it. You know, you can completely discard me if in fact I'm full of it, but you know and I know things aren't working. So the comment that I make, and people like myself who say it's not working, are on the level, And I wish I was wrong, but I'm not. So my thoughts on what I introduced in my last video, it's just us, as Quantum of Conscience has mentioned. It's finally making sense to him that, hey, the reality out there, it's kind of like that Jane Roberts, Seth Speaks. You know, her books were fabulous because she introduced the idea that that energy, consciousness, matter is interchangeable, right? The idea, it's kind of like the Einstein thing, who apparently plagiarized the E equals MC squared. So there is a kind of transfer or interaction between energy and matter or mass that's interchangeable. And this is, from my perspective, I spent some time on researching Qabala and understanding the numbers, the codes. When you look at things that this Rabbi Jesus, apparently, if he existed, not existed, said extraordinary things. The Last Supper thing, I'll just give you my synopsis of what I think the whole Last Supper thing is, where he introduces this idea, this Einstein idea of E equals MC squared during the Last Supper, where he says, and this is so terribly, terribly misinterpreted by the reptiles who run the joint now, the Vatican, who've taken it upon themselves to be the givers of the good news to the population, these sissies in dresses, these degenerate pedophiles who have taken it upon themselves to give us a direction anyway. They've missed it completely. And here is the Last Supper idea. What I understand to be wholesome and working in this, it's not eat my flesh, you cannibals, eat my flesh and drink my blood. What this character is revealing to us on a fundamental level, this feeling of spirit, is not but that you reenact this eating of his body and drinking his blood, is that there is energy and matter is interchangeable. It is the gateway in our version of existence to transition in some form or other. So the idea of transmuting, sort of like that alchemy idea where you raise a base metal to gold, or that kind of transformation, applies in a spiritual sense as well. We have to feel connected to this idea that spirit is real, and we're able to transition out of this or incorporate within matter, not just what we are sensually attracted to, but there is another element to us that makes us us and makes us whole. And this is all that this Last Supper thing meant. Be aware that energy and matter is interchangeable. There is no barrier. And even Jane Roberts was talking about that in her Seth books. I'll just give another quick example on now what I'm going to lead into is Mr.Cati. I highly recommend, another YouTuber that I'm appreciating in terms of his decoding, exposing the algorithms that appear to be functioning within our reality, within our existence, that are really undermining us or giving us a version of events that it's too complex to actually really understand. The guy is quite intuitive in his understanding of how numbers indicate the significance or even the intent behind an event. And intent is everything. Intent is everything. So if you're well-meaning or if you have ill feeling, that intent will manifest itself very clearly. This is very important. It's not just like neutral information coming at me. There is intent behind actions. Always is. Always is. When we're dealing with people. So here's just an example of understanding the code, understanding numbers and what it means. And when I was researching Qabala, and I recommend Suarez, forget his first name, Suarez, the Qabala trilogy, and he deciphers the numbers that you have letters, and now in the you have letter calculators that create numbers like the Pythagorean, and there's another one that identify the numerical values of names, and then of course you have numbers, dates, all that kind of stuff that give an indication in a kind of cumulative sense. These letters or numbers are put together and they're simplified and they come out in a certain way. And I'll give you an example of what I understand through my study of Qabala. You have a concept. You have concepts created. Biblical scriptures are fundamentally numbers. The script that you see, it's a continuous line. There's no separation between these letters in the original scripture, as far as I understand. So it takes intuitive and intuition and insight to decipher what it means. Like in the beginning, Bereshit. Why does the Bible start with the second letter and not the first letter, Aleph, right? So interesting. It's an indicator for us to reflect on, to think about, to internalize, to try and understand. So I'll give you just a quick example. That there is a concept within biblical scriptures that is Ruach Elohim, which is the breath of God. And if you take the Ruach Elohim, the numerical value of this is 300. You can do this exercise, add up the numbers or add up the letters and the numbers that are the letters, and you'll get 300. There is a letter called Sheen in the out or the Hebrew alphabet. Sheen. It's the letter 300. So you have a significance in terms of the numerical value of Ruach Elohim and Sheen, which is the letter 300 within this alphabet. Now, an interesting introduction here now, I'm going to say that you have yod-hay-SHEEN-wav-hay, which is the God concept, the Yahweh, this idea, the 10-5-6-5, yod-hay-SHEEN-wav-hay 10-5-6-5, and in Jesus you have yod-hay-SHEEN-wav-hay, which is YHWH. So you have an introduction of this 300 letter into the Jesus character. And what, like psychologically, what is going on here? So you have this God concept. Basically you have, Jesus is the son of, well, he said he was the son of man, but we've introduced the idea that Jesus comes from this God principle. Yahweh and YHWH come from the same kind of source, whatever that is. I'm saying that this introduction of the letter 300 is interpreted as the breath of God. So you have like a peculiar character that contains the breath of God within him. Okay? This is just a quick analysis, a very simplified version of how complex this code, this number code is, which is why I appreciate Mr.Cati. I'm going to put a link underneath Mr.Cati. And this is going to be a little longer because I want to articulate after having expressed my gratitude out there to people that comment. And I want to continue now with the idea that we have been hijacked, that the idea that our existence has a wholesomeness attached to it. That's the best way I can put it. The fact that you and I exist and all the creatures and all the biota and the entire experience that we are within, we are part of something. We are not separate from, we are part of something is extraordinary. The complexity is extraordinary. And to attach a simple explanation to it is ridiculous, which is why I like Cati. Cati goes through a very complex reasoning of numerical values, names and numbers, and identifies a pattern. a pattern of behavior associated with certain numbers. So this is not a reference like the idea of the numbers, for me, are not sacred in the sense, well, Cati calls the 369 sequence as the God sequence, which is, it's a little different, Kabbalistically speaking. Obviously, the 10-5-6-5 is sort of the Kabbalistic version of it, and I'm not really that educated on understanding the numerical, I'm not capable of analyzing it, his work, and understanding it in great depth. I'm just throwing something out here, and my point is, what I'm throwing at you is I'm becoming more and more inclined. Even earlier on in the 90s, I did a series of painting called the Qabala paintings, where I began to feel and recognize in my work a sense of an underlying mystery that was affecting my life, life in general, both in a good way and in a not so good way. And it was, which is why I decided to go into it somewhat and research it, because I wanted to see if there was a language that explained this aspect of our existence that indicated possibly certain patterns or a knowledge, a deeper knowledge, something that the Masons have usurped upon themselves, like they're the carrier of the torch. They're anything but. However, it doesn't mean they don't have something to offer in terms of insight. The good ones, I don't know, I would agree with Kennedy. I want no part of any secret societies. Expose yourself, be out there, be of service to humanity without your little secret stashes and whatever you do with your columns and your symbols and all that kind of stuff. But this is actually, unfortunately, part of this coding. Part of this numerical coding idea comes from the idea that someone can get a leg over, that someone out there feels by being able to understand this mystery, and understanding only from the point of view that there are symbolic references to, but not knowing the source. There is just a kind of manipulation going on. So if you're tied in, let's say, for example, that there is a God principle that has structured this existence. And I say principle because I'm not sure in what kind of format, because how would a mind with a few gray cells like ours as human beings, even the highest IQ minds, and IQ has nothing to do with insight, how could we comprehend something that is so complex? When you even look, we can't even produce a dust particle, never mind a leaf in a plant. What about a complex structure like our body? We have no clue how all of that stuff fits together within this principle expressed what appears, as Mr. Cati has identified, algorithms that function through numbers. And there is obviously now a reference to computers as well, that computers contain complex algorithms or are programmed to act out complex algorithms based on zeros and ones that are a version of this numerical signature. This, like everything a computer does, you can trace back to a signature, to a particular kind of sequence that can be understood with a computer. If you have enough computing capacities, which is what they're working on, and speeding it up faster and faster, they actually think they can create intelligence, that's an oxymoron. That's not how this works, that you can reduce things to a mechanical function and believe yourself to have a grasp. All you're doing is manipulating. There is no, I am not arguing with the idea that you can manipulate this reality through your understanding that there is a pattern. And that's all there is. It's like following the pattern. So you have what has been introduced. Let's say, okay, what I said is I appreciate a wonderful piece of music. If I listen to a Beethoven sonata, I've been listening to The Tempest recently, and I find it very invigorating because there's a sequence of notes that just sort of elevates me out of my sense of isolation and connects me to something. Beethoven was wonderful, capable of doing that in an epic way even. And Bach is more subtle. Whatever that sequence that he presents us, this combination, the code that he presents us with is a lot simpler and subtler in many ways than, for example, the bravura of a Beethoven. Or if you look at art, you go into art history and you look at, let's say, I don't know, if you a simpler version, I see the medievals like Giotto Cimabue. These people had a simpler, very complex from the point of view of spirit, but representationally much simpler than, let's say, Michelangelo or later on Velázquez. You have an escalation of attempting to get closer to this principle, this spirit principle, by invoking high skill, like high skill levels, like hand-eye coordination. If you look at Velázquez, the guy is just phenomenal. Or even Vermeer, who produced very few pieces, the skill level is extraordinary. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. So what I'm saying is what has occurred. Forces have entered. When I say forces, I would say that there has been a long tradition of understanding, maybe thousands of years, even pre what we consider our history. There appears to be a continuous understanding of this manipulation. So let's say that we observe the natural world out there and it represents itself, the sun going up, going down, you have solstice, you have patterning, you have algorithms unfolding right in front of us continuously, like representations of something that is repetitive. So once someone clues into this, they can take this and manipulate our minds based on the repetitions that seem to exist in this God principle of creation out there, and get away with whatever the hell they want to get away with, because humanity is like a plasma that absorbs. Humanity is the lowest hanging fruit for these types who figure that they can really take advantage of something. So this is what has happened. I think there has been a long tradition of manipulation, that whoever is responsible for the creation of, or whatever is responsible for giving us this gift that we are part of, has also allowed a patterning to let someone with a mind on whatever level to come in and manipulate it. This is what has occurred. Now, is it on the level of AI? Is this experience primarily just a kind of complex coding that can be deciphered? Is that what is going on? And in my mind, I mean, I've become much more open to the idea that the indication through Mr.Cati, for example, or Carlo Suarez, who identified the code for me to some extent, is it possible that there is what some people refer to as a simulation, that this is merely, since matter, energy, interchangeable, of course, you know, the archetypal matrix idea, that there is an exchange of matter and energy creating a reality out there that is able to be manipulated. And this makes a lot of sense from the point of view that if you analyze this through a code, through a number code, it appears there are very strong indicators that things happen within an organized or intent. The numbers suggest intent behind occurrences and events that we feel like, oh, it's just out there. The Iraq War, buildings fall down, or people get assassinated, Kennedys get assassinated, and wars start, and Hitler comes up, and all these entities with certain names which have codes attached to them, like Peter Thiel, this other fellow I listen to sometimes, Quinn Michaels, Peter Thiel, if you put the anagram calculator, it turns to be the reptile. And Peter Thiel is involved in all this AI subterfuge mucky muck going on. So okay, summing up, what I think has happened is that there is a fundamental wholesomeness to everything that I feel myself to be a part of. And there are consciousnesses, awarenesses of this code, of this reality, of this experience, of this existence that can be manipulated because it is an algorithm, because it is structured in a patterning, even in a symmetry, whatever, that can be infiltrated, that can be hijacked. And why not? Right? Why not? So you have the what feels to be this malintent side has I think a very small number of entities have been involved in this, and they're represented by the oligarch types, which are frontmen, which are front organizations. They're just fronting for something and they keep us in their headlights, but it's going on a whole other level. Who is behind the curtain? Nobody knows. This is very clear because it's so complex, all this stuff. Whoever is capable of manipulating this on the level that it appears to be manipulated, it's very, very high up, and we don't know who is behind the curtain. And as Matt from Quantum of Conscience said, it's up to us. It's just us. He's getting toward this understanding that we can stop this. We can stop this manipulation because we're an essential part as the plasma that flows within this mucky muck. And we can stop it by no longer becoming amorphous plasma, but individuation, like people saying to themselves, I can choose the right thing. What I say, I can choose the right thing. I can choose to do the right thing. So the ability of entities, awarenesses out there for a long period of time, it's very clear that we are subject to what appear to be patterns of behavior that have been injected to divert us from the sense of wholesome, all right? Wholesome. And all the organizations, this is my last point. All the organizations, all the supra-structures around us, from every religion, from the idea of country, from the idea of anybody getting together on a level of society and organized groups, are so infiltrated by the subterfuge within the code, are so infiltrated, not that they shouldn't be, that we shouldn't organize ourselves, but certainly not on a level of countries with 300 billion people in a country. How retarded is that? That is completely, I mean, the imbeciles that go along, we're all imbeciles on the level that we go along with a superstructure that benefits nothing and no one, as we can see. So why do we continue with it, right? So this entire system, as I call it, the culture of death, has revolved around the idea of organizing ourselves into this, into these superstructures of dysfunction, totally, because it's intended to be that way, so that control can be kept. And if control is lost, the first thing will be to get rid of a whole bunch of people, because it's probably easier. I'm not sure if that's true, to control fewer people than a lot. I think it's actually easier if you have the more people you have that go a certain way, the more, the easier it is to push you in a certain direction. Because if you have a smaller population, this is why I'm not really quite sure about this whole Bertrand Russell kind of idea, the George Bernard Shaw useless eater idea. I think it's to their benefit, the people that are behind this, even in the overt way, to keep us in larger numbers. This is why there's like so many people, apparently. Like, who knows how many people there are on this planet? Really, really, who knows? We're just being told stuff all the time. I'm going to stop it here, but I'm going to continue on this line, the idea of the simulation out of a code that is complex and the God principle that has clearly established itself, because we all have this sense of wholesomeness, this feeling that we can do the right thing, but we're undermined. This is that principle that I refer to, if you want to call it the God principle. This code is within us, and the DNA, our DNA contains it in some form or other. And my other point was, once a few months back, I said that the Bitcoin phenomena is actually a subterfuge to mine the energy in computers to log our DNA and the DNA of all life. I think this is what's going on underneath the Bitcoin strategy. So we're being undermined, but we have a choice to do the right thing every day, and that'll make all the difference in the world, and it'll peripheralize these bastards, these criminals that are trying to that are attempting to front for this behind the curtain, whatever that is. These people are not principles. They're just carrying something out, and then they get everybody else to tag along. You print enough money, everybody will tag along, right? Boy, this has been longer.